While Russia's invasion evoked dark and grisly memories of previous conflicts when sovereign boundaries were redrawn through the use of military force, this is also a direct challenge to the international rules-based order that has evolved since the Second World War, that network of treaties and conventions and norms underpinned by international law designed to prevent nations imposing their will on other nations through coercion and military might. Russia is a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council and thus has a particular responsibility to uphold international peace and security. Yet its actions have betrayed the trust of every nation around the world. Of course, this invasion commenced 8 years ago when Russia backed separatists, so-called, in eastern Ukraine and deployed advanced weapons systems across its border. We in Australia know that because on the 17th of July 2014, a Russian surface-to-air Buk missile brought down Malaysian Airlines MH17, a civilian aircraft over eastern Ukraine, killing all 298 passengers and crew, including 38 Australians. Families in Australia, the Netherlands, Malaysia and other countries around the world continue to grieve, and yet Russia still has not accepted responsibility as the perpetrator of this atrocity. Ukraine's leader has stood firm in the face of Russian aggression, rallying his people through his presence and his words, supporting his military as they inflict significant losses on the invading forces. His energy, his determination, his advocacy for freedom against tyranny has inspired people around the world. And it is our great honour that he has agreed to participate in this event this evening. Please join with me in welcoming the President of Ukraine, His Excellency Volodymyr Zelenskyy.
Dear Mrs. Chancellor of the Australian National University, dear teachers and students already present, I know that overall quantity of participants in these translations and this broadcast, there are more than 20 universities of Australia, and I thank you for this opportunity to have this speech with you. We have 161st day of the full-scale war which was launched by Russian Federation against Ukraine. Every day world is shocked by the new messages about new Russian atrocities. This shouldn't be a common thing for the world, because it would mean that the world has put up with it. A lot of people were concerned and still concerned about what they need to do. That they should be delicate and not to anger Russia, that Russia would have an opportunity to save the face, and it has to be an obvious for everyone that doesn't matter at all. We cannot anger those who is already insane. It is impossible to save the face of those who doesn't want it by itself. Russian Federation openly demonstrated to all the nations. It's been already 161 days. It's important not to forget none of those days. World constantly speaks about the Russians' action only in the context of their later, let's just say, topical atrocity. But now world needs to put it all together and recognize and realize the one who wants to save its face doesn't wipe the peaceful villages and city out of the face of the earth, doesn't launch them from the multi-launch rocket system every day and every night, doesn't hit the households, doesn't hit with cruise missiles, doesn't hit the living quarters with cluster munitions and phosphorus bombs, doesn't launch the rockets to the Kramatorsk railway station, for example, where the hundreds of people were waiting for evacuation, doesn't launch rockets to the Vinnytsia city center, where hundreds of people were just walking, doesn't launch rocket in the mall in Kremenchuk, where hundreds of people were just buying food or things, doesn't drop bombs on the birthhouses and hospitals, on the kindergarten schools, universities, on museums, theaters, and temples, doesn't target the artillery against cemeteries, and doesn't strike with rockets on the memorial complex of Holocaust victims in Babin Yar. The one who wants to save its face doesn't commit the hundreds, the thousands of military crimes and crimes against humanity, doesn't commit the massive executions of the peaceful population, doesn't put the handcuffs on the peaceful people, doesn't put them on their knees and kill them with a shot in their back, doesn't rape wives on the eyes of their own children and children on the eyes of their own mothers. The one who wants to save their face wouldn't do the blockages of the occupied cities, wouldn't deprive the people of food and potable water, of necessary medical supplies, wouldn't deprive people of heat, of warmth, of communication, of the slightest hope, doesn't shoot the humanitarian corridors, doesn't deliver people to the coercive labor, doesn't kidnap children, separating families, doesn't leave the decades of collective graves. Those who wants to save his face doesn't hijack the nuclear stations, doesn't hit the energy blocks with tanks, doesn't threaten to do the nuclear war and energy crisis, doesn't block the ports and ships with wheat, creating the threat of a massive famine on the planet. And by signing a document on the blocking of the ports and free passage of the ships, doesn't shoot ports, doesn't shell ports on the next day after its signature. The one who wants to save face doesn't bring with him the mobile cremators to destroy bodies and hide its own atrocities, doesn't have attitude to his own soldiers as to cannon fodder, doesn't do massive tortures, massive atrocities and terrorists. The one who lost his mind, his heart, his conscious dignity, all that human has. This is the one who lost it long ago. Today's Russia has lost his face long ago. It has happened not yesterday, not the day before yesterday, and not the day, and not this weekend, this week. This has been proven a lot, and this mask has been already disguised. The mask of peacekeeper with the holes for the mask with the holes for the eyes and mouth, the mask who wear the terrorist. And the difference between terrorists and Russia is that the terrorists hold their accountable for their action, and Russia cannot do even that and try to accuse other people of their atrocities. Separate countries and the whole world. And now this world is before the choice. It's been a long choice. To someone it's uncomfortable, and to someone it's unavoidable. You cannot hide of this choice. You cannot somehow avoid it. For 161 days of a full-scale war in Europe, the humanity has come through 161 points of unreturn. For many countries, there is time where they should give up their own interest before the interest of the planet, or otherwise both of them, the first and the second, would be threatened because of the terrorist, of the world terrorist. any trade, any business, or any other forms of cooperation with Russian Federation today, most of all, will bear the great benefit for the others and most probably death to the others. Political, economic, energy, or any other benefit equals to the lives of thousands of people who are killed by Russian weapon. World has to do its choice, UN has to do its choice, Security Council has to do its choice, International Red Cross Committee has to do its choice, OSCE has to do its choice, the EU countries has to do their choice, NATO countries has to do their choice. G7 and G20 countries have to do their choice. US has to do its choice and to do this important step to recognize Russian Federation as the country terrorist sponsor. This time has come long ago, and the reverse countdown has been already launched. And there are only two options, determination, and that means the cease of atrocities of Russia, or another bombing, another shelling of those terrorists. I know that a lot of Australians send their financial aid to our country, give us medical supplies, work as volunteers in hospitals, they provide delivery humanitarian assistance, and also they are on the front line. And I call you, continue to help us, continue to help Ukraine, including in being in the classrooms by standing for the truth and debunking the myth that were so masterly and so skillfully fabricated by Russian propaganda machine. I am very thankful to Anthony Albanese, government, who made significant systematic support of our country, which includes full-scale military and humanitarian assistance, sanctions against Russian and Belarusian legal and physical entities, the canceling of Ukrainian goods taxes, given the call for our Ukrainian energy. And currently, your country gives one of the biggest military support to Ukraine among the countries who are non-NATO members. We will be thankful for continuation of this support. War is not over, and today we, as never before, need your support, need support of all the civilized countries, along with whom we will most sure stop and conquer evil. Thank you for attention. Glory to Ukraine. Thank you for this question, Sophia, as soon as I heard. I am inspired by people. I am inspired by our nation, strong, resilient, honest nation, the people who fight for its life, for their families, for everything we have, for our Ukraine. This belongs to the Ukrainian nation and nobody else. And that's why I'm proud of it. And I'm proud that I'm one of the citizens of those people. The resilience of our nation depends not only on leaders of the country. Everyone in our country is a leader. That's the situation we have. If someone wouldn't feel this resilience, someone couldn't feel Ukraine as his own life, that wouldn't happen. We haven't finished this war yet, but I'm sure that thanks to resilience of our country, to our military, to our doctors and everyone, I'm sure we will win this war. It depends only on one country in the world, and its country is Russia. Only one nation, it's Russian nation. And let us turn our attention on this World War II, the bloody war, bloody tragedy, with bloody aftermath, with bloody stains, the stains in history of the, first of all, German nation. It was a fascist Germany, but then German nation found the power to recognize the tragedy as a great, tragic mistake of their nation, of their people, of those who followed Hitler, of those who, because somebody supported this government and somebody just kept silent, and everyone understood that everyone were guilty, and they have chosen another path to recognize this tragedy, to recognize themselves as guilty and move on. And today we see one of the most powerful economies in the world and one of the most powerful democracies in the world. That was their choice. The choice was right, as I think. And they gave the chance to the following generation not to live as isolated, but to live among the civilized people and to be on the same high level of life. And I think that Russia will have this opportunity for sure. You know, you can't stand aside, because the one who stands aside, not depending on which corner in the world, that one helps Russia, because they are powerful, they have more people, more equipment, they have nuclear weapons, and it's a struggle of trinocracy against democracy. So you can stand aside if you protect common principles with Ukraine. I'm sure that in the world, the majority of people, the majority of countries protect the same shared values that we protect today on the battlefield with the cost of our life. Then you can stand aside whatever it would mean. You can't just sympathize. I would be frank. We thank you for your moral support, but you also need to support us with deeds in order we would have the opportunity to win the tyranny. We need to have support with concrete actions, because every hour, every day, we are losing the most important which we were given God by planet Earth and our countries, the lives of people. And help, I already told that a lot of you Australian citizens, indeed, they help us a lot. They render humanitarian assistance. Please don't forget about it. Please continue. And the second, I would like to turn my attention is informational war. It's difficult, and Russia spends billions on their propaganda machine instead of raising social standards. They spend it all on informational weapons, and they fight with the world. We all know everything about Russia. We personally know that the enemy has come to our land, but in different corners of the globe, which are far from Ukraine, they spread on different continents, on African continent and Malaysian space. They spread the informational policy that they haven't invaded anyone, and that works, unfortunately. And even after a few years, after a lot of years of the war, people can't open their heart to the truth. Sometimes they're good with it, they are comfortable, they have their business interests, and those business interests are more important than the lives of people for them. So that's why, please share this information with everyone, with other continents that I mentioned, and students and youth. By using the social networks, you have an opportunity to show the truth about Ukraine. That will help us indeed.
Дуже дякую.
Thank you.
Я був там одного разу зі своєю сім'єю.
I was in China with my family. It's a beautiful city, and I wish you peace in Melbourne and health and everything the best. As for the China, you know, as a president, indeed I do everything every day that Russia wouldn't be able to unite anyone around itself, and pray the Lord that I'm not alone. We all work on it with great dedication to deliver the truth, to deliver the information. And we see that Russia are losing its allies, its economic allies. It's not very full scale, but still it loses it. And I would like China to join the unified world position as for tyranny of Russia against Ukraine, in whatever way it would happen. As for now, China is balancing and indeed has neutrality, and I will be honest, this neutrality is better than China would join Russia. And I believe that society of Russia, the nation of China, the people of China will do the prudent choice. It's important that for us that China wouldn't help Russia. We have some occasions as for sanctions. Some nations help Russian Federation a little. They do not feel on themselves which influence this war has made on the whole world.
Mr. President, another question from a student in our audience here. Paulina from Macquarie University has a question.
The resilience of Ukrainians has impressed the whole world. In what ways do you think Ukrainian society and culture will be different after the war? Thank you, President Zelenskyy.
Thank you for the question. You know, I think that the values we are protecting, we were having those values even before the war, but we had this as granted. We had the right to live, the right to have freedom, the right to love, to choose where you live and who you will love, most important. And to love, it's our nation, it's a choice of every person. You don't think before the war that you could have this moment where you need to choose because of the war. And the most scary thing is that someone else will choose where you need to live. And you hear it from me, but you can't feel it right now. And I'm happy that you don't have to face this choice. And I'm happy that you still have the peace in your country and such a great, such a beautiful faces. And I am happy that you posing these questions, that you having answers for those questions. And you're thinking not only for yourself, and you're thinking for the future of the country you live. So you have this freedom, the same values that we have. And after the war, all these understanding what's important faces. And I am happy that you posing these questions, that you having answers for those questions. And you're thinking not only for yourself, and you're thinking for the future of the country you live. So you have this freedom, the same values that we have. And after the war, all this understanding what's important for you became very acute, became very severe from different priorities. They are different, those priorities. People starting to think about other things. The most important thing is my child, my family. How is our neighbor? Let him live. What's going on the front? What's going on with our military, with our statehood, with our homeland? We are retreating or we are going further? Are we wanting to give up our countries? We are changing the values. Second, the resiliency. We are united. It's very important. We can have a lot of differences in our society. Someone likes the law, someone doesn't like the law. Somebody sees the harsh vertical, somebody sees the liberal society. We have different people with different views. We have different ethnicities, different nationalities. And I'm proud of this, that we have such a multifaceted country, such a diverse country. But it's united. It's very important to have unity in our country on this period of trials, and I would like to believe that we will stay this very united nation in the same way that we have during this war, and we will have the same unity after the war.
We have a question from Kyle online from Queensland University of Technology, and Kyle asks, in the future, do you ever think Russian-Ukraine relations could reach good terms after this devastating war? And if so, what would it take for that to happen?
Most probably, this is the hardest question. Because I will tell you, Frank, nobody wants anything to have in common with people who did all those things with our people. And I'm telling you wholeheartedly, is it possible or not in the future, it will depend only on Russia. And what we need to do for this, I even don't know if we can have this list. I don't know. Every family has lost something, and everyone enshrined inside himself something, and will not forget whom he has given, what he has given, whether it was a child, whether it was a father. Excuse me for I am telling this, the teared hands and feet on the battlefield, are they able to return it? I'm not sure. That is why they will have to think for us and for the whole world what to do to return at least some possibility of the future common existence with Ukrainians, with other world. That's the question that belongs only to him, to them, only to them.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have another question from a student in the hall here, Bridget, from the Australian National University. Bridget, would you stand and ask your question?
As a leader at war, what has been the most challenging or the hardest concept?
Лідер в час війни, і скажіть, будь
What
ласка,
has been the hardest
що
concept
для
to
вас
grasp
найбільш
while understanding and fighting on the ground?
Під час боротьби і у розумінні цієї війни? We didn't heard your question.
Didn't you hear that? I'll ask Bridget to read it again, slowly.
As a leader at war, what has been the hardest concept to grasp or the hardest thing to accept when fighting on the ground?
Did you hear that, Mr. President?
Nice question.
The most
Sorry, I didn't hear.
The hardest thing to accept as a concept when fighting on the ground.
Я вам розкажу.
I will tell you.
Люди.
I didn't think that
І тут я
people
борюся.
are capable of those things, and I would share it in the two aspects. On one side, our people who are capable of such heroism, who went out on the street and started to stop the military equipment tanks with bare hand in the areas which were occupied. We were asking, we tried to evacuate people, and somebody told, I'm not going out of this, it's my land. And those people, there were a lot of them. And the next part of humanity, another side, the people who came to our land, who simply, I don't want to repeat, I already told that, but those things that they done with the same people that they are, it's a shock for me. I never thought that people are capable of those. We have seen different movies, thrillers, the horror movies, we all watched it, but I never thought that the reality in Ukraine would be even more scary than the scariest movies. Thank you.
President, I have a question from Xing Yu, a student online from the University of Sydney. Xing Yu asks, how does the ongoing situation affect Ukraine's economy, and what is the economic rebuild plan for the future?
Дякую за запитання.
Thank you for the question. The war has displaced 12 millions of people. Part of them are still in Ukraine, losing their job, their business in other cities. A part has moved abroad, losing the same. And thanks to God, not losing the wish, the desire to come back. And when they have the desire to come back, to return, that means most probably we will rebuild. As for the rebuilding Ukraine's economy, that's another question. It will happen in time. And now I would like to state a few things about the economy. When we have such a quantity of people moving abroad, we understand that we lost a lot of jobs, billions of jobs actually, not thousands, when sometimes politicians generalize tens of thousands. No, those are millions. And for the country which has 40 million population, 12 millions displaced, and you understand that it's a disaster. It's a great strike for economy. It's almost killing economy. And now it's in coma, and we have to do, not only Ukraine, but all the world as doctors, do some remedy for our economy, that we will compensate the deficit of $5 billion. This is a deficit that we have every month. It's a great sum of money, $5 billion US. We're not talking about great construction, about something for a great project. It's just for granting social assistance, basic social needs, those who need this assistance urgently, 5 billion. And these are huge losses. Blocking of ports by Russian Federation, this is a great loss for economy, not only of Ukrainian economy, but the world economy. Of course, for Ukraine, as a minimum 10 billion of tons of grain needs to be returned from our land. And you know that $5 billion deficit monthly will give us an opportunity, will require this wheat urgently for us. It's very important, and Russia is blocking it, and it understands that it will cause the food deficit through blocking of Ukrainian ports. It can cause famine of millions. It can cause chaos in a lot of countries. We understand it. Those countries calling us. We are constantly in communication with them, and they ask us, they beg us, let's pressure Russia. And just recently, thanks to UN in partnership with Turkey, we had first ship with the delivery of grain, but it's still nothing. But we hope it's a tendency that will continue. And the aftermath of this war, it's not only horrifying for Ukraine, but for all the world. Even in the future, in the far future, and the world yet is not feeling it, but it will feel it. And I don't think there is some distance in the war.
We have a question from Bailey, who is online from the University of the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. Bailey asks, as a person with a disability, my heart has gone out particularly to Ukrainians with a disability during this war. Has there been any additional international aid for Ukrainians with disability and other minorities needing extra help to survive? And if not, what is the most appropriate way for us, as both individuals and as a nation, to help?
Thank you for this question. We have a few programs, and by the way, my wife is dealing with this direction. She helps with her side, our country and our institutions with these programs. You can have information on those programs, and of course you can help those programs. And for example, United 24 platform, we have a great charity state platform where you can find in the internet which direction you can assist. It's not only about weapons, it's also about medical supplies, it's about such directions that you just mentioned. It's also infrastructural support, etc. You can join, you can participate in those directions, and you can have interest in them, and we support our handicapped people, or every people we try to help. They are our priority.
President, I hope we have time for a couple more questions. I'll ask Olivia from the Australian National University here in Llewellyn Hall to ask a question.
Amidst the conflict and violence, how do you feel about the participation and victory of Ukraine at the 2022 Eurovision Song Contest, particularly with a song that recognizes so much of Ukraine's language and culture? Do you believe that music is an important tool for cultural connection during violence?
First of all, yes, I do think that the culture, sport, and science have the great significance in the times of war, even more important than in the peacetime. And, you know, for Ukraine, motivation is to win for every Ukrainian, and that's why we are motivated by any victory. We support our sportsmen, and as never before, we support our cultural activists. And Eurovision is one of the greatest examples where we support our cultural activists. We support our scientists when they become the best, the mathematics or physical scientists. We support them as never before. Before this, a lot of people haven't even heard about us, and that's why this is a victory in all directions for us. It's important for us because it's a great battlefield for us everywhere. Thank you.
President Zelenskyy, I understand that time is against us, but we think that on that note, we can end this conversation with you. On behalf of the audience here this evening and the participants online, on behalf of the Australian National University and the 21 other universities that are working with us to present this event this evening, we thank you for taking part. We appreciate your time and the opportunity to hear directly from a world leader who is fighting for the survival of his people. We stand with you, we stand with Ukraine, and we support you in your continuing fight for freedom and democracy in the face of tyranny. Thank you for your efforts. We salute your courage and your determination. Please join with me in thanking President Zelenskyy.
Sometimes you ask me what more we can do for Ukraine. So I said that you've been Kiev two times, and I think you saw. Our people, and I think you understand why they're fighting so brave. So answering your question, what else you can do for Ukraine? Come to Ukraine, to understand us, to be in Ukraine, to help us, to be and see our people. I think it's very important. Thank you so much for this possibility. All the best. Good luck. We will win together. Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, that certainly was an extraordinary opportunity to hear from President Zelenskyy, and I'll now hand over to the Ukrainian ambassador who wishes to have the final word.
Honourable Julia Bishop, Your Excellencies, dear friends, students. I'm overwhelmed by this support I've seen for President Zelenskyy. Such a big turnout, 21 universities participating, very genuine discussion. I was very pleased that you could have a very interactive conversation. And because often people come, they do a speech and they leave. And I think that was a unique opportunity for many of you young people out there to be able to ask your question, to get an answer, and just to feel and understand how it is to be a leader at the times of war. There's some very good questions that were asked. Of course, my favorite one was about the Eurovision Song Contest. Personally, I was involved for 10 years in the Eurovision Song Contest and contributed to Ukraine's victory in 2004. So, but look, I think students are so important. I'm very curious to find out later how many students eventually have been watching this live stream, because I think that never happened in Australian history, and I think Australia has even done much better than other countries in terms of the turnout and the number of people. I'll have to find out the statistics from the US and UK, but I think in terms of the numbers, I think Australia again has demonstrated that you know how to punch above your weight. When I was a student myself, I was extremely active in the youth politics and the youth activities. And at the time, I set up European Youth Parliament, which was a chapter of the European Youth Parliament in Europe. And often, when I go back and analyze what was the best thing that I could have done in my life, and I have to tell you that those were those university times when myself and my friends, we all stayed very active. We all were extremely active in youth politics, in youth activities, just doing more than doing extracurricular work, leadership work, because I think as young people, there is so much you can learn in a classroom, but there's so much you can learn outside of the classroom. So I think it's so important to do that, because the skills you can learn outside of the classroom will be extremely useful for you whatever you do. If somebody asked me 10 years ago if Russians would invade Ukraine, I would probably tell you that you're crazy, it's impossible. But 8 years ago, Russians invaded Ukraine. They grabbed Crimea, they invaded eastern part of Ukraine. The war has been going on for 8 years now. But again, in December, when everybody was discussing what Russia is about to do, is it part of this strategic ambiguity, and they're just trying to impose more leverage on Ukraine, I again did not believe that Russians would mount another assault on Ukraine at this scale, but they did. Since I arrived here in Australia at the end of March, it's been very busy for me. But let me tell you, the most rewarding experience I've received was actually talking to university students. I did my lectures. I've spoken here at the ANU at least 3 times at different conferences. I spoke at the University of Western Australia. I did a lecture at the University of Adelaide. I engaged with the University of Sydney. I'm doing a lecture at the University of West Sydney. And every time I talk to students, this is what gives me inspiration, because I think students are the future of the country, and so much will depend on you. Today, Prime Minister Albanese has ordered the review of the defense posture of Australia. And I really welcome that, because it's so important to actually revise the security and defense strategy which Australia has. Because at the end of the day, it's so important to be ready to die for your country when there is a need for that. Because Ukrainians were not ready to die, but we did. It turned out we were ready, we were prepared. We need to build this resilience throughout the society. And resilience does not just come out of thin air. You need to work on that. You need to build it. Today, I had a meeting with Professor Metcalf in the morning, and we're discussing this issue. And we shared a similar experience we've had with Finland. I've been to Finland many times, And I've spoken at different audiences there. And as you know, Finland has very strong territorial defense forces and very strong resilience within the society. Because as a country which was outside of NATO, next door to Russia, and actually having survived the winter wars against the Soviet Union in the 40s, they understand the threat which is out there. And I think Finland, there's so much to learn from Finland. And now there's so much to learn from Ukraine. And we would be happy to share our experience with you, with Australia, with Australian people, of how to be prepared, how to actually prevent malign foreign influence within the country, how to deal with hybrid warfare, and actually how to be fighting on the ground. Because at the end of the day, there is not a better place in the world where you can learn the modern warfare and actually what to do, how to run the country at the times of war. Australian government has been extremely generous for the support. The previous leadership of Scott Morrison was out there. They've supported Ukraine from day one by sending weapons, sending bushmasters, sending military kit. And Prime Minister Albanese, we've had bipartisan support here. He decided to come to Ukraine being only 5 weeks in a job. So I think it was extremely important for me as a wartime ambassador to see Australian Prime Minister to go into Ukraine for the first time in the history of our bilateral relations. And this year we just celebrated 30 years. So being there with your Prime Minister for 12 hours in Ukraine, being in Irpin, Bucha, being in Hostomel, then actually attending the meeting with President Zelenskyy for 3 hours was very special. And I think it was a very special moment also for Prime Minister Albanese to see it with his own eyes, to be able to see that level of destruction, to hear witness accounts about civilians who were killed in Bucha. 460 people in one village were killed and executed just because they were Ukrainian. Can you believe that? Russians are perpetrating massive war crimes, crimes against humanity. Just last Friday, we learned about atrocities which were committed by the Russian troops in Oleninka. That's a prison where they put the soldiers from Azov Steel, where they were defending the steel. They tortured them live on camera. Then they put them in the building and blew them up. This is unbelievable. But look, I want to finish this talk on a positive note. I'm extremely thankful to Julia Bishop for giving this floor, for creating this opportunity. And very few of you know, but I met Honorable Julia Bishop in Ukraine in 2014 when she came there to address the issue of MH17. She came to Ukraine Crisis Media Center and I moderated her press conference. So I was very happy when I came here as an ambassador. The first meeting I had in Australia was actually to come to the ANU and meet Julia Bishop. Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Ambassador, in truth, I always have the last word. So I want to thank Anne McNaughton and our team at the College of European Studies, Rory Metcalf, and the team at the National Security College, Vice-Chancellor Brian Schmidt and his executive team. And thank you all for being present here this evening and for those who participated online, for being here, for showing how much you care and for showing support for the people of Ukraine when they need it most. Travel safely, be careful, continue to be invested in this issue because it does matter. What's going on halfway around the world does impact on our life, our values and Australia's perspectives. So thank you very much for being part of this eventful moment in the history of ANU.